Genealogists and lawyers do probate research to establish heirs and prove the right to inheritance. Oh, so since probate records are so important to establish relationships, we're going to dive into these valuable court records as a way to tackle our challenging genealogy research questions. And in this video, we're just going to cover some of the basics that you need to know before you start investigating in probate records. But before we get started, I have a question. Here's a little bit of trivia, and we'll answer it in the follow-up video where we apply the basics that we cover in this video to the series that I have on breaking through brick walls with the addition of probate records. But my question is, what are probate researchers called? Do they have a special name, or are they just probate researchers? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm curious, and especially if you're not from the United States, I would really like to know what you call people who investigate records pertaining to somebody's death and the inheritance by their heirs. All right, so with your assignment fully in place, I want to welcome you to this channel. For those of you who are longtime watchers, you know that my name is Devin Noel Lee, and this is your first time here. I am so glad you are joining us, where we like to talk about DNA research and how you can use that, as well as documents to climb your family tree and ultimately to write and record stories along the way. We love giving away free things. So if you are new to our video series and you are trying to bust through brick walls, be sure to visit the links in the description of this video and you can pick up your free brick wall busting guide. Not only will you get the guide, you will also get a really cool second thing that you have to open your emails to find out about. So go grab it if you haven't. So let's cover basics. Basics, right? What are probate records at the lowest level of understanding? Well, I like this quote from familysearch.org. Probate records are court records created after an individual's death. Kind of what I was suggesting at the beginning. They relate to a court's decision. So these are legal documents, right? Legal proceedings regarding how an estate is going to be distributed to heirs and creditors, and also articulates the care of dependents. Are you starting to see why these might be really great records for your ancestors? Because from what Family Search, about 25% of the population around 1900 had probates about themselves, probate records, proceedings about themselves. But about 50% of everybody living in that time period were named in probate records. Either they were an heir, a spouse, a child, a dependent of some kind, or they were neighbors, friends, witnesses, and creditors. You really want to dive into these records, but we need to know what we're trying to accomplish with this research. So the first thing we want to know is, what is the goal that we're trying to achieve? I mean, we're trying to look for clues, but what kind of clues could we possibly find in probate records? So some of the answers that we're looking for is to identify spouses and relatives. So for the most part, it's going to be descendants, but you never know when you're going to find clues to the past, because sometimes they'll reference property they got from a previous person, and that can give you some relatives information that you're looking for. You're looking for the death of other relatives. If your ancestor is passing on property to their children, but one of their children died, then the grandchildren will get the heirs if they have issues, or that portion of their inheritance will go to someone else, and they'll identify that that person was deceased prior to this person whose estate is being probated, and that's why they're not receiving an inheritance. So you can find the deaths of other relatives. And later on, you're also going to see you can find the deaths of witnesses too. So that's kind of a cool feature. You can find clues for the person's occupation, wealth, religion, military service, their citizenship status. There's lots of things that you can find in probate records. You can find out where they lived, where they owned property. You can find out about adoptions and guardianships, because a lot of these things will appear in probate records. And sometimes you can find signatures, which, I mean, you don't need it, but when you find it, it's really cool. And sometimes what I like to see the little receipt books where individuals wrote out, I owe this money to this person, and they sign their name. It's really cool. How do you do it? Well, thankfully, there are a number of steps that we can tackle. The first step in diving into probate records is kind of have to know where your ancestor lived. You need to know the counties where they lived throughout their lives, because anytime they owned property, there could be some probate proceedings and additional records that took place in that court. And when you know the names of the county at the time your ancestor's estate was probated, then you need to go to the next step. And that is paying attention to boundary changes. So here I am on mapofus.org. Check the show notes for the link to this website. The state is shown at its earliest date of creation. There's a little handy timeline guide that you can hop between. And there's also these abbreviations. So let's say you're not sure about Essex, you can look at Essex County and get some facts. That's kind of cool too. Let's go back to the map. Starting in 1863, it tells us the original formation of what the county names were. And if we click next, then we can see this little segment popped up right there. So watch it, see it's not there. And then in 1885, it's there. Cape May county created from Burlington County, okay? So you keep clicking forward, and now here's Essex in 1686. And notice it just got chopped up pretty good. And then later it's going to be chopped up even further. So for the time of my ancestor, who's talked about in the brick wall videos, he died in 1828, the Effingham, the potential hypothesis ancestor. So between 1824 and 1837, I want to know what Essex County looks like, because that's the county where Elizabeth is located. So look, it got cut up quite a bit by 1824. So if we go forward 1 year, Essex is still here, and Elizabeth is located there. But as we navigate forward, keep looking at Essex, boom, there's a change. In 1857, it becomes Union. Let's say your ancestor lived in one place all of his life, but because of the boundary changes, he lived in, 3 or 4 different counties. So you're going to have to check each county for the probate records and for other associated documents to solve your case. So it's very important that you know what the county was and where they resided and where they owned property. Which leads us to the next point, is that you need to know the law. Now, many times when we cover probate basics, we spend a lot of time on definitions of terms. And there will be links in the show notes to some resources to define terms that you may be unfamiliar with. But I found that you've got to know the statutes to help you understand what you're interpreting when you actually start looking at records. So there are laws for what we call testacy laws. So when someone dies with the will, there's some laws that affect who can create a will. And not only who can create a will, but laws that govern the validity of will when it's presented to court, what has to happen. The other things that you're going to discover is that there are laws that deal when someone dies without a will. And you want to be aware of those laws because they vary from state to state and even from country to country. Never assume that it's always going to be the same, because it won't. So when you're diving into the laws, you're going to find cases where someone died in one location, they had property in different places. And in this example that you can see on screen, somebody had property in 2 different places in New Jersey, as well as a place in New York, and then she's going to have probate proceedings in multiple locations. And that comes from lawshelf.com, and you can find a link to actually more great examples that they have about probates and laws and stuff, and you'll find that in the show notes. What do you also need to be aware of? The statutes not only tell you about the legal jurisdiction for the probate, but you're also going to be learning about the ranking order of heirs, who gets what when, especially when someone dies without a will. You're going to also learn about progenitor, I'm probably not saying it right, but essentially the eldest son, does he automatically inherit everything, or has that been done away in case law? You will discover the laws governing dower rights. Do they get a half of an estate automatically? Do they get a third of the estate or full estate? There's lots of laws about women that you want to investigate and not just assume, oh, they can't inherit anything. Go and find out. You want to validate everything. The laws of land transferring. If someone dies, they're owning property. What happens if they have a lot of debt on that estate? Does it have to be sold? Can the debt be transferred to someone else, or do people inherit and the debt just magically disappears? You want to know what the laws are, because that's going to affect many of the decisions people make. And then you're going to also want to investigate tax laws, because sometimes people make different decisions with what they're doing with their property, trying to avoid or lessen the tax burden on their heirs. So lots of statutes that you want to investigate, but how are you going to find the statutes? I know it sounds really, really scary, and some of the legal terms, it's really kind of crazy, but let's dive in and look for statutes and how to find it. Now, we're going to make Lisa Louise Cooke really proud. We're going to use Google. There are some other places we can look. We can look at the Internet Archive, and we can look at Genia files for legal/wills for some state laws. And there's also a book. Check all of that out in the show notes. You'll find a link to the show notes in the description. But let's type in the state of Ohio and the word statutes. And let's say 1870. So right here on HathiTrust, on Ohio Memory, and even on Google Books, there are statutes for the state of Ohio that you can go and read and explore. So now you can type in the word intestate, and you're going to see a number of the pages that are impacted by that law. So let's just zoom into one for a moment. And notice how that if the estate come not by descent, devise, or deed, or gift, these are the things that are going to happen. It was kind of interesting because this was for a different case that I had, and the order of descent and distribution of the property of the deceased went to first to the children, and then if no children are living, the estate passed to the husband's wife, or to the deceased husband or wife. That was kind of interesting because a lawyer friend of mine had said, are you sure? And she went and looked at the statutes. She was like, actually, yeah, that's kind of unusual for the places that she researched. So that's why you go look at the statutes. So now that you know who can get what, when, where, why, and how in the locations that you're researching, it's time to go find the records. And how are you going to do that? Well, that's when we're going to go find and search for indexes. Unlike a lot of records online, you can't just type a name in a search form and boom, then you have all the records at your disposal. You're still doing genealogy the old school way, where you need to find a reference guide, a waypoint into the records, and that's when you're going to look for the indexes. Now, not all indexes are the same. This is an administrative index, and you can see the last name, the first name, a date, and a volume and a page number. and that's for an administrative index. Sometimes you're going to see multiple columns. Sometimes the index will show you all the different books, the journals, the will, and the case number. Oh, here's the case number here, but they actually are one index for a lot of documents, so those are really handy. You're also going to find indexes. This is a guardianship index. Guardianship is actually part of probate. It doesn't always mean that people are orphaned. It just means that they're either minored or incapacitated. And so you'll really want to go in and dive into those indexes. The indexes are found in a lot of different places. There are some on your genealogy websites, and there are some on courthouses. That's when you're going to have to dive into the Family Search Wiki in order to find out more. Now, one caveat, if you are doing Southern research in the United States, you have got to become familiar with probate records, because the most important thing in the South was land and property. We won't get into that. But they didn't necessarily keep birth, marriage, and death records until the 19-teens, but they kept their probate records and their land records. So make sure you check out this video that's on this channel. So once you find your ancestor's name in an index, you want to make note of all of the numbers, the case files numbers, the probate packet numbers, all the different numbers for wills and books and page numbers and all of that other stuff. You really want to keep track of all of that, because then you can go and search the records. And I kind of have some bad news about searching these records. The bad news, a lot of the records are not online. They aren't online. And so you're probably going to contact the probate court and making a visit to go investigate the record collection, but you need to have your ancestor's name and date. And you want to see if you can check out the indexes before you make the trip and find out they don't even have anything for them, because no probate was handled for your ancestors. There are a lot of wills and probates coming online. You just can't type a name into a search form for the most part and have your ancestors come up. You're going to be able to access them in your pajamas at 3 a.m., but you're going to have to browse through them. So there's good news and there's bad news, but start diving into the records and see what you can see. Once you find the records, then you need to start analyzing them for the clues that they have available to you. And because you look at the statutes, when you see things like son or cousin or brother, did it really mean cousin? Did it really mean brother? Or does it mean some other relationship? You're gonna have to look at the definitions and the statutes and determine if it doesn't mean what you think it means. So you start looking at the records, you analyze them, and then with any luck, you can start finding great details, but ultimately breaking through your ancestors' brick walls. And in the next video associated with this probate section, I'm going to show you how I actually utilized probate records, both from my clue for my hypothesis as well as my key ancestor, to try to make some connections between the two individuals. So stay tuned for that video. Now, I barely touched the tip of the iceberg on probate records, but we have more resources that I want you to check out after this video. One of them is some suggestions from our friend Randy Sievers from Genia Musings. Andy interviewed him, and there's some great nuggets of wisdom in that video. And then, yes, there are some probate and will records online, and in this video, I show you how you can research Ancestry and get access to some of the records that you're looking for, if not all. What other questions do you have about probate records that I didn't cover in this video? Be sure to put them in the comments section and I will answer them or make a new video about them, because I'm sure we all would love to learn more. So if you want to go watch the brick wall busting series and the inclusion of probate records in that series, check out this playlist or watch this video, which was specifically selected for your need. I need a new catchphrase. If somebody can tell me how to say that, I would be happy to use it.